quorum.
Madam President. Councilor Arroyo. Councilor Baker.
Here.
Councilor Bach. Sorry. I'm so prepared. Yeah. Councilor Braden. Councilor Campbell. Councilor Edwards. Councilor Asabi George. Councilor Flaherty. Councilor Flynn. Councilor Janey.
Present.
Councilor Mejia. Councilor O'Malley.
Present.
Councilor Edwards. And Councilor Wu. We do have a quorum.
Wonderful. Thank you. I've been informed by the clerk that a quorum
Give a
is
roll call.
present. At this time, I would ask all councilors and guests to rise. Today, the invocation will be given by our illustrious clerk. After the invocation, I would ask all members to remain standing as we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Madam President. On a new year, O God of our being and becoming, we enter a new year in the spirit of reflection. We look back to decisions made and issues we have dealt with, and we look ahead to the issues of the coming year, the decisions that we have yet to make. We ask you for wisdom. We ask you for strength in helping us to become better servants of your love. We take this time at the turning of the year to thank you for the gifts of another year amidst the hustle and bustle of this beautiful city. We give thanks for the gift of life and for the abundance that is ours. May we always rejoice at the splendor of creation. On this day, we acknowledge issues that generate a lot of feelings. May you grant our public servants wisdom to make the decisions that will bring the greatest good to the greatest number of people. We ask your blessings and guidance in this new year. We pray in the many names by which you are known. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Welcome. Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Could you please amend the attendance report to reflect that Councilor Mejia is present? I'm not sure if you caught her the last time. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I see some young folks coming into the chamber. I believe these are the young folks from the Boston Youth Leadership Association, and they're here to observe, so I just wanted to give them a shout out. Hello. Thank you for being here. Wonderful. Now, on to the order of business. First is the approval of the minutes. If there are no corrections to be made, the minutes of the last meeting will stand approved. Seeing and hearing no objection, the minutes are so approved. Madam Clerk, I would like to take docket 0289 out of order, and this docket are the rules for our coming term. Could you please read the docket?
Docket number 0289. Councilor Janey offered the following order: that the rules of the Boston City Council be adopted for the municipal years 2020 to 2021.
God bless you. Thank you so much, Madam Clerk. Before we move on, the chair moves for new language of Rule 44 to reflect the new lobbying ordinance that was passed last session. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Say nay. The ayes have it. And now the chair moves for passage of the amended docket 0289. Did you want to speak? Councilor Asabi George?
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to speak on the amended rules and speak to one point in the committee assignments. When I took office in 2016, I worked to create the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery with then Council President Wu, because the opioid epidemic was ravaging all of our communities, because we were faced with the deeply interwoven crisis of homelessness, pervasive trauma, and unaddressed mental health issues, and the opioid epidemic. And that reality remains true today. I believed then and continue to believe that these issues deserve our specific, concentrated, and undivided attention, because the devastating impact in Boston continues today. So I must express my disappointment that the Committee on Homelessness, Mental Health, and Recovery no longer exists. This committee was formed because creating solutions for the opioid crisis is not just about addiction. It's about unemployment, it's about poverty, it's about homelessness, and mental health. We can't talk about opioids without talking about the crisis of affordable housing, because we can't help an individual find recovery if they don't have a place to live. We can't talk about homelessness without talking about mental health issues that often contribute to homelessness in the first place. This committee was intended to lift up the issues impacting communities who are always left behind. The poor, disenfranchised communities who continue to be disproportionately impacted by this epidemic. Our families and kids in Roxbury, Dorchester, and the South End, and across the city who bear the brunt of this crisis. By separating these issues, we lose our effectiveness to develop holistic and comprehensive solutions for this crisis. More importantly, we further marginalize these issues and our most vulnerable residents. Obviously, this work is very personal to me. It's personal to my team and many of us in this room, and the countless providers I've worked with across the city of Boston over the last 4 years. I remain committed to working with all of you on these issues and them to make sure as a body we do not forget our most vulnerable, those who are struggling and need our support, our families and children experiencing homelessness, our Black and brown communities disproportionately impacted, whose lives and problems are routinely marginalized and left behind. I will continue this work and support our most vulnerable to make sure that we end homelessness, that we create better access to mental health services, that we help individuals find recovery. This needs to be a top priority for the Boston City Council. It needs to be a top priority for the City of Boston. I look forward to the work ahead. I look forward to continuing my commitment and the commitment of my office on this work ahead. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Asabi George. And I want to go on the record and thank you for your leadership in this space. For those who are in the audience or watching at home, please know the commitment to homelessness and recovery services is a priority for this body. The issues around recovery and mental health will be addressed in our new Public Health Committee, and the issues around homelessness will be addressed in our Housing Committee. Thank you again for that. At this time now, the chair moves for passage of the amended docket 0289. All in favor say aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Hearing no objection, the amended docket of 0289, which are the 2021 rules, have been adopted and the order is passed. Now we will move on to communications from His Honor the Mayor.
Docket number 0246, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, known as MSBA, statement of interest for the accelerated repair program for the following schools: Samuel Adams Elementary, Boston Day and Evening Academy, Curtis Guild Elementary, Nathan Hale Elementary, Dr. William W. Henderson Inclusion Upper School, Rafael Hernandez, K through 8, Lewis Henderson, K through 8, Patrick Kennedy Elementary, William H. Orenberger, K through 8, James Otis Elementary, and John Winthrop Elementary.
Yep. Madam Clerk? I'm going to ask that we actually do a reconsideration. All right, I'm going to ask that we do a reconsideration so that we can do a roll call vote on the rules. Is that okay?
Sure.
Is that okay with folks? So we are now back at docket 0289, and I'm asking for reconsideration so that we'll actually do a roll call vote. Madam Clerk?
Yes. Counselor Arroyo? Counselor Arroyo, yes. Counselor Baker? Yes. Counselor Baker, yes. Counselor Bach? Yes. Counselor Bach, yes. Counselor Braden? Counselor Braden, yes. Counselor Campbell? Counselor Campbell, yes. Counselor Edwards? Counselor Edwards, yes. Counselor Asabi George? No. Counselor Asabi George, no. Counselor Flaherty? Yes. Counselor Flaherty, yes. Counselor Flynn? Yes. Counselor Flynn, yes. Counselor Janey?
Yes.
Counselor Janey, yes. Counselor Mejia? Yes. Counselor Mejia, yes. Counselor O'Malley? Yes. Counselor O'Malley, yes. And Counselor Wu? Yes. Counselor Wu, yes. And we will add Counselor Wu in attendance also.
Wonderful, thank you for amending that.
So there were 12,
I wish to change my vote.
to,
No, I'd like to support Councilor Asabi George.
thank you, Counselor Baker.
Thank you.
So, Madam President, there are 11 votes in favor and 2 votes in opposition.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Now we will move on to communications from His Honor the Mayor. And Madam Clerk, would you, just for clarity, please reread docket 0246?
Docket number 0246, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority, known as MSBA, statement of interest for the Accelerated Repair Program for the following schools: Samuel Adams Elementary, Boston Day and Evening Academy, Curtis Guild Elementary, Nathan Hale Elementary, Dr. William W. Henderson Inclusion Upper School, Rafael Hernandez, K through 8, Lewis/Henderson, K through 8, Patrick Kennedy Elementary, William H. Orenberger, K through 8, and James Otis Elementary, and John Winthrop Elementary.
Thank you so much. This docket 0246 will be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means.
Docket number 0247, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $406,299 in the form of a grant awarded by the Massachusetts Department of Transportation pursuant to the Federal Safe Accountable, Flexible, Efficient Transportation Equity Act, a legacy for the users, SAFETEA-LU. The purpose of this grant is to fund the preliminary and final design of the Boylston Street between Ipswich Street and Brookline Ave in Boston.
Thank you so much. Docket 0247 will be referred to the Committee of Planning, Development, and Transportation.
Thank you. Madam President, would you like me to read docket number 0248 through 0250?
Yes, please, thank you.
Thank you. Docket 0248, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $50,000 in the form of a grant for the FY20 Traffic Enforcement Program awarded by the United States Department of Transportation, passed through the Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security, to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund high-visibility traffic enforcement of motor vehicles laws, including but not limited to speeding and aggressive driving, impaired driving, and occupant protection. Docket number 0249, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept and expend an amount of $10,000 in the form of a grant for the charitable donations awarded by the Frank R. and Elizabeth Simone Foundation, Inc., to be administered by the Police Department. The grant will fund the initiatives to support health and wellness among the members of the Boston Police Department, and also support for families of fallen or injured officers. Docket number 0250, message and order authorizing the City of Boston to accept a donation from the Herb Chambers Dealership, Boston, of a 2019 Ford passenger van. The vehicle will be utilized to transport youth and seniors to various city and Boston Police Department-sponsored events.
Thank you so much. Counselor Campbell, did you want to speak to these dockets? Sure. We're going to take a quick recess.
Just such a pain.
Yeah, you can speak to them separately. Back in session. Chair recognizes Counselor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam Clerk, and thank you, Madam President. So docket 0248 through 0250 have been read in, is that right? Okay.
Read in.
I'll just quickly speak to them separately. Apologies for the confusion, as Chair of Public Safety was waiting for the rules, but thought you were going to do it. So again, Madam President, my apologies. So docket 0248, given that it's a small grant of just $50,000, is pretty self-explanatory. It will fund high visibility traffic enforcement of motor vehicle laws, not limited to speeding and aggressive driving, impaired driving, and occupant protection. This is a grant that the department's received before. We've had hearings on it in the past. Nothing has changed. If anything, they were looking for additional resources to do this work. So I ask as Chair of Public Safety and Criminal Justice that we suspend the rules and pass docket 0248. For docket 0249, again, self-explanatory. It's a small amount that we want to get to the department as soon as possible. It is a $10,000 grant, self-explanatory. Will fund initiatives that support health and wellness for the members of the police department, as well as those officers that are injured as well. So we're seeking suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0249. And lastly, docket 0250, again, pretty self-explanatory. The department would like to receive the vehicle as soon as possible. It is a vehicle that was donated by a local dealer, Herb Chambers, to the department to transport youth and seniors, again, self-explanatory. As the Chair of Public Safety and Criminal Justice, seek suspension of the rules and passage of all three dockets. Thank you, Madam
Thank you.
President.
And Madam
Again,
Clerk, we're gonna-
apologies for the confusion.
Thank you. We're going to take these votes separately. So thank you. Counselor Campbell seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0248. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0248 has been passed. Counselor Campbell also seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0249. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0249 has been passed. And Counselor Campbell seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0250. All those in favor say aye. Nay. All those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0250 has been passed. And Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0251 through 0253 together.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0251, message and order for the confirmation of the appointment of Konstantinos Ligris as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring March 1st, 2022. Docket number 0252, message and order for the confirmation of the reappointment of Kerry Walsh as an alternate member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring November 1st, 2022. And docket number 0253, message and order for the confirmation of the appointment of Eric Robinson as a member of the Zoning Board of Appeals for a term expiring July 1st, 2021.
Thank you so much. Docket 0251 through 0253 will be referred to the Committee of Planning, Development, and Transportation. Now moving on to reports of public officers and others. Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0254 through docket 0267.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0254, notices received from the Mayor of the reappointment of Manar Schwabi as a trustee of the Make Boston Shine Trust Fund for a term expiring January 14th, 2022. Docket number 0255, notices received from the Mayor of the reappointment of Kyra Fox as a trustee of the Make Boston Shine Trust Fund for a term expiring January 14th, 2022. Docket number 0256, notices received from the Mayor of the reappointment of Jerome Smith as a trustee of the Make Boston Shines Trust Fund for term expiring January 14th, 2022. Docket number 0257, notice is received from the mayor of the reappointment of Inez Foster as a trustee of the Make Boston Shine Trust Fund for a term expiring January 14th, 2022. Docket number 0258, notice is received from the mayor of the reappointment of Jacob Wessel as a trustee for the Make Boston Shine Trust Fund for a term expiring January 14th, 2022. Docket number 0259, notice is received from the mayor of the reappointment of Emma Handy as a trustee of the Boston Common Maintenance Trust Fund for a term expiring January 14th, 2022. Docket number 0260, notice is received from the mayor of the reappointment of Emma Handy as the trustee of the Franklin Park Maintenance Trust Fund for a term expiring January 14th, 2022. Docket number 0261, notice is received from the mayor of the appointment of Catherine Bennett as an administrator of the Boston Housing Authority effective January 6, 2020. Docket number 0262, communication was received from Brian P. Golden, Director of the Boston Planning and Development Agency regarding proposed minor modifications to the South Cove Urban Renewal Plan, project number Mass R-92, with respect to parcel P-12C. Docket number 0263, communication was received from Brian P. Golden, Director of the Boston Planning and Development Agency regarding proposed minor modifications to the Government Center Urban Renewal Plan, project number Mass R-35, with respect to parcel 6. Docket number 0264, notice was received from the mayor of his absence from the city from 7 a.m. on Wednesday, January 22nd, until 5 p.m. on Friday, January 24th, 2020. Docket number 0265, notice was received from the clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the Ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the City Council at its November 20th, 2019 meeting. Docket number 0266, notice was received from the clerk, in accordance with Chapter 6 of the Ordinance of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the City Council at its meeting of December 4th, 2019. Docket number 0267, notice was received from the city clerk in accordance with Chapter 6 of the Ordinances of 1979 regarding action taken by the mayor on papers acted upon by the City Council at its meeting of December 11th, 2019.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Docket 0254 through docket 0267 will be placed on file. Moving on to motions, orders, and resolutions. Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0268.
Docket 0268, Councilor Asabi George offered the following order for hearing regarding the fiscal year 2020 Boston Public Schools transportation budget.
Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a refile for an update on the Boston Public Schools transportation budget for fiscal year 20 as we prepare for fiscal year 21's budget. Over the last few years, I've held a BPS transportation budget hearing so that the council is more prepared for the upcoming budget cycle. BPS continues to have cost overruns year after year and continues to have a chaos-inducing transportation issues, particularly at the start of each school year. These transportation issues not only cause problems for families who can't take time off work, but they also induce fear for families, particularly immigrant families when their children's buses are delayed for home arrival. This last fall, Superintendent Casilius hired a consultant to work with the Transportation Department to improve bus arrival times and to identify system improvements. I hope to have this hearing soon, and we try to do it at the mid-year, school year point, so the council can have a more accurate picture of the BPS transportation budget to date, spending to date, so that we can evaluate potential savings, look for improvements in funding, and advocate for a more reasonable and appropriately appropriated transportation budget for fiscal year 21. Unlike some of these other education-focused hearing orders, this one I ask be sent to the Committee on Ways and Means.
Okay. Wonderful. Councilor Flaherty.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. Please add my name and appreciate the diligence of our education chair, and also remind folks that we're educating less students, thousands of less students, which means we're transporting less students, yet transportation costs continue to skyrocket. That's very precious funds that would be better used in the classroom as opposed to brake repair and windshield wipers, et cetera. So time has come to bring these folks in and find out why do we see transportation costs continue to spiral out of control at the same time that we're educating and transporting those students. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Thank the chair.
Thank you.
the
Councillor
sponsor.
Campbell.
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank Councilor Asabi George for her leadership, not only of the Education Committee, but also on this particular issue. To echo the comments made by Councilor Flaherty, we do have a declining school population, and yet the transportation costs continue to go up and will continue to go up because there's nothing we have in place now that will cap those costs. So I would hope that at the hearing, the department administration would come with ways in which we either can cap those costs, reduce them. Don't see how that's possible given the current arrangement in the contract, but it would be nice to have some creative solutions brought to that hearing, not just a simple update on the numbers as to ways in which we can reduce that and redirect those resources to the classroom and to the school level. Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you so much. Anyone else looking to speak or add their name? Please add Councillor Baker, Councillor Bach, Councillor Braden, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Edwards. We already have Councillor Flaherty, thank you, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Mejia, Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Wu, and the chair. Docket 0268 will be referred to the Committee on Ways and Means. Thank you. Moving on to docket 0269.
Docket 0269, Councilor Asabi George offered the following order for hearing regarding the work of the Boston Student Advisory Council in their policy agenda.
Councillor Asabi George.
Thank you again, Madam President. This hearing order will give the students of the Boston Student Advisory Council an opportunity to share their policy agenda with this body. As a city council, we vote on the budget that impacts our students' daily lives, so we should hear from them about their core issues, hopes, and concerns for their schools in this city. BSAC currently has representation from every high school in the district, which is a huge milestone for that group. As a former member of BSAC, I look forward to having them here at the City Council and providing them a platform to learn from them and their interests.
Wonderful. Anyone looking to add their name? Councillor Arroyo, and I need you to raise your hands high so I can see them. Councillor Arroyo, Councillor Bach, Councillor Braden, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Mejia, O'Malley, Wu, and the chair, please. Docket 0269 will be referred to the Committee on Education. Moving on to docket 0270.
Docket 0270, Councilor Asabi George offered the following order for hearing regarding the creation of the City Council Youth Council, CCYC.
Councillor Asabi George.
Thank you again. I'm not sure if we'll stick with CCYC, but first I'd like to add Councillor Mejia as an original co-sponsor of this hearing order.
Hearing no objections, Councillor Mejia.
Thank you. This again is a refile from last year to create a Boston City Council Youth Council, providing our youth with opportunities for civic engagement and contributing to government policy, as it's critical for us to help them become strong leaders, stronger leaders for our future. I look forward to working with Councillor Mejia and all of you to establish a CCYC as a pathway for our youth to get firsthand experience in how government, and in particular the City of Boston and its council works.
Thank you so much. Councillor Mejia.
Yes, I would like to thank Councilor Asabi George for adding me as a co-sponsor and congratulate you on your leadership on this issue. For us, when we say all means all, we really do believe that young people should be at the center of every conversation that we're having, and I look forward to partnering with you on bringing this council forward. And more importantly, it should not just be a transactional voice, but that we create an opportunity for young people to be on boards and commissions, and we're really thoughtful about the role that they play in helping to move the city forward. And I look forward to collaborating with you on this. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone looking to add their name? Councillor Arroyo, Councillor Bach, Councillor Braden, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Edwards, Councillor Flaherty, Councillor Flynn. We've got Councillor Mejia, you're a sponsor. Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Wu, and please add the chair. No, you don't have to, because it wasn't a third. Right, and there was no objection when I asked if
Oh,
we could add,
thank
so.
you. Okay.
Thank you. Docket 0270 will be referred to the Committee on GovOps. Moving on to docket 0271. Madam Clerk?
Docket 0271, Councilor Sabi George and Wu offer the following order for hearing regarding an admissions policy and funding changes for Madison Park Technical Vocational High School and improving partnerships.
Councilor Sabi George.
Thank
And I'm
you.
just going to leave your light on.
Thank you. I've got a few more ahead, a lot of work ahead. First, I'd like to suspend Rule 12 and add you, Council President Janey, as an original co-sponsor.
Hearing no objections?
Thank you.
So moved.
This
Thank
is a hearing order that is a refile to revisit the conversation around Madison Park Technical Vocational High School. With colleagues, Councilors Janey and Wu, we've co-sponsored this hearing and this work over the last few years. We've held multiple conversations and hearings and working sessions to hear from students, faculty, advocates, the teachers union, and partners in this work. These conversations have produced certain recommendations for changes to the admissions policy, how to increase or why to increase funding for Madison Park, and to build out Madison Park partnerships. I'm hopeful in this new year we will make some substantial changes. Our students and staff at Madison Park are excited about their future.
Thank you so much, Councilor Sabi George. Councilor Wu?
Thank you, Madam President. I wanted to rise to thank the lead sponsor and yourself for continued partnership on this. I think it's pretty clear just how transformational this would be for the city to have a premier state-of-the-art facility with everything that our students need to be accessing this vocational pathway. We have the resources in Boston to do it, and the students are talented and brilliant. We've met them at the school. The faculty are excited and ready to go. We've been out to see schools in other parts of the state, and when you're standing in some of those buildings, such as in Worcester, you just sense how possible it is for Boston if we can just prioritize and take care of some of the issues around governance, funding, and facilities. So looking forward to continuing this and seeing real progress this year. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And the only thing I'll say is I'm looking forward to partnering with the two of you and getting this work done. Anyone else looking to add their name? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Mejia, Councilor O'Malley, and obviously the chair is already on there. Thank you. Docket 0271 will be referred to the Committee on Education. Moving on, Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0272?
Docket 0272, Councilor Sabi George offered the following order for hearing regarding the governance structure of the Boston School Committee.
As
Councilor
chair,
Sabi George.
I'll just get right to it. As chair of the Education Committee, I've held a number of hearings to explore governing structures for the Boston School Committee, and we did that starting in December of 2018. This docket is a refile because this conversation is still ongoing. It has become clear that the citizens nominating panel also deserves a closer look along with the actual structure of the school committee. I look forward to this conversation in this new year.
Thank you so much. Anyone else looking to speak or add their name? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Mejia, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, and the chair. Thank you so much. Docket 0272 will be referred to the Committee on Education. Moving on. Madam Clerk, if you could please read docket 0273.
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0273, Councilor Sabi George and O'Malley offered the following order for hearing regarding Build BPS.
Councilor Sabi George.
Thank you, Madam President. I will note, because I've received the question now twice, many of these are refiles, but I would request that colleagues who have a particular interest in any of these topics reread the refiles compared to last time, because as the work has continued, we have edited, refined, refocused some of the efforts. So the whereases may have changed over time, as is the case for this Build BPS hearing. As you all know, Build BPS is an ongoing project to rebuild our schools. This investment in our school facilities offers us a huge opportunity to also advance our climate goals. Approximately 70% of Boston's carbon emissions come from our buildings. Given the mayor's recent executive order that new municipal building construction will target a zero net carbon on-site or a positive energy standard. Build BPS should be utilized to accelerate our progress towards this standard at our schools and our citywide goal to be carbon neutral by 2050. I look forward to partnering with Councilor O'Malley to hold this hearing so that we can ensure this particular piece of Build BPS is realized in the work ahead. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to commend my maker and friend, the at-large councillor from Dorchester. I know that we've updated Rule 38 to allow that is no longer protocol, but I am a stickler for the rules.
Please
and
continue.
You can always tell a stubborn Irishman, but you can't tell him much. So wanted to thank my colleague and friend. The difference between the refile of this year as opposed to last year is because of this body and our leadership collectively working alongside Mayor Walsh, we were able to put in a new ordinance, a new rule, new guidelines, which will mandate that all new municipal buildings will be net zero carbon. So this is such an exciting development. I look forward to seeing schools, libraries, police stations, firehouses, housing developments that are all net zero carbon. We need only look at the Hastings School, which is a wonderful high school in Lexington, Massachusetts, a net zero carbon school, which generates an additional 200,000 kilowatt hours each year of energy that then goes back into the grid, which then helps fund and power other city agencies and other city amenities. So it's really a great example of doing the right thing for the environment, for the taxpayer as well. What could be better than that? Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Councilor Edwards.
Thank you very much. I want to first congratulate the makers of this ordinance, or of this hearing order. I appreciate your leadership, both in terms of making sure that when we're talking about education and equity and building, I have to say Councilor Sabi-George has been an incredible leader. I wanted to thank also Councilor O'Malley for his leadership in making sure that any way in which we move in the city of Boston, we are thinking towards the future, we're thinking in terms of making it as green as possible. I wanted to add my name and also add to this conversation with the hopes that when we do discuss Build BPS, we're also discussing and inviting the BPDA to be at the table because they are also the pushers, they are the planners, they are the zoners of our city. And if the zoning, if the planning is taking hopefully an equity lens and is looking at how we're going to move around our city, literally planning the streets, planning the density, then they need to be at the table when we're talking about building schools. And what we have found is that unfortunately the conversations have been siloed. I am encouraged that they will be at a planning meeting for Charlestown to discuss some of the school's issues as well as planning. I believe that's tomorrow. But I wanted to make sure that as we talk about Build BPS collectively around the city, the BPDA is there and that BPS and the BPDA are planning appropriately as well.
Thank you. Anyone else looking to add their name? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell. We have Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Wu, and please add the chair. Thank you. Docket 0273 will be referred to the Committee on Education. Moving on to docket 0274. Madam Clerk, could you please read the docket into the record?
Docket 0274, Councilor Sabi-George offer the following order for hearing to analyze the safety and security measures taken to protect school environments from threatening situations.
Wonderful. Councilor Sabi-George.
Thank you. This is a refile to give BPS an opportunity to discuss the improved infrastructure and safety practices at every school. We know things have improved over the last number of years, and I'm thankful that BPS has worked pretty aggressively and purposefully towards making sure that every classroom has doors that locks, that classrooms have doors that lock, and that other measures are in place to protect students, certainly from any active shooter situation. We also need to make sure that we're protecting students from bullying in any form, that we have safe routes to school, and that we are protecting our kids from active drug use and improperly discarded needles. All students deserve a safe learning environment where they can thrive academically and without fear. That is why I look forward to a continued discussion on this issue as it continues to be important, certainly to all of us here, but especially those that have kids in the school system. I want to make sure that for my boys and for all of our students that we've got measures in place to protect our kids. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Anyone else looking to add their name? Counselor Arroyo, Counselor Bach, Counselor Braden, Counselor Campbell, Counselor Edwards, Counselor Flaherty, Counselor Flynn, Counselor Mejia, Counselor O'Malley, and Counselor Wu. Please add the chair as well. And docket 0274 will be referred to the Committee on Education. Madam Clerk?
Docket 0275, Councilor Asabi George offered the following order for hearing regarding the new BPS strategic plan.
Counselor Asabi George.
Thank you. The superintendent recently released her strategic plan for Build BPS, and I'm so excited to sort of get to that work and see how it's reflected in the upcoming budget process. I'm calling for this hearing to give us as a body an opportunity, and the public, our residents, an opportunity to better understand the superintendent's goals for BPS and see how it will be reflected in the upcoming budget process.
Thank you so much. Anyone else looking to add their name? Counselor Arroyo, Counselor Bach, Counselor Braden, Counselor Edwards, Counselor Flynn, Counselor Mejia, Counselor Flaherty, Counselor O'Malley, Counselor Wu. And please add, and Counselor Baker, and Counselor Campbell, and the chair. So that's all of us. Thank you so much. Docket 0275 will be referred to the Committee on Education. We will move on to docket 0276. Madam Clerk?
Docket 0276, Councilor Asabi George offered the following order for hearing regarding the implementation of policy requiring all Boston Public Schools to have a full-time mental health and social emotional support specialist.
Thank you, Counselor Asabi George.
Almost done. Since my first year in office, I've advocated alongside our former colleague, Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, for a full-time nurse in every school. Given the fact that so many of our youth have childhoods rocked by gun violence, homelessness, or family instability, it's clear that a full-time mental health professional in every single school is equally necessary. We want our kids to learn. If their traumas and insufficient social and emotional support networks are holding them internally hostage or trapped, they will never be able to fully participate in school or in their life. Our students are dealing with higher levels of depression, anxiety, bullying, and many kinds of trauma that school staff are not equipped to handle. During the fiscal year 20 budget process, funding was secured to hire an additional 23 mental health providers and social emotional support specialists, although that hiring process has been slow. The funding was not enough to have a full-time mental health professional in every school, and we need to get to that in order to best support our kids. I look forward to and understand that it's a commitment of Superintendent Cassellius's to have these providers in our buildings. So I look forward to working with her administration, as well as Mayor Walsh's administration to implement a policy requiring all Boston Public Schools to have at least one full-time mental health specialist in each of our school buildings.
Thank you so much. Anyone else looking to add their name? Counselor Arroyo, Counselor Bach, Counselor Braden, Counselor Edwards, Counselor Flaherty, Counselors Flynn, Mejia, O'Malley, Wu, and the chair. Thank you so much. Docket 0276 will be referred to the Committee on Education. Moving on to docket 0277.
Docket 0277, Councilor Asabi George offered the following order for hearing regarding the current state of inclusion classrooms in BPS.
Counselor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam President. And last but certainly not least, in my refile and submission of new hearing orders, this one is about inclusion done right in our classrooms. There are many wonderful learning opportunities and aspects to the learning environment that come with inclusion classrooms. But the truth is, if inclusion is not done right, it is shortchanging our students, whether they have an IEP or not. And it makes stressful work environments for our teachers. Historically, the inclusion program model has been so hamstrung by budgetary constraints that BPS counts a teacher with multiple licenses as sufficiently fulfilling the program. It does not. We need inclusion done right across our district. Having this hearing will provide an opportunity to identify program strengths and identify areas which need improvement. It will give our school community members a platform to discuss their demands and needs for a robust inclusion program across the district. This issue has been ongoing. Last year, I held a hearing on BPS's failure to comply with many student IEP plans. We heard hours of testimony from parents, students, and teachers. It is crucial that we hear from them as many times as it takes to have inclusion done right. Parents and teachers and students will testify at the school committee tonight about improving the program across the district. We need to use our power here at the City Council to determine the current barriers to implementing a fully funded and well-resourced inclusion program district-wide.
Thank you so much. Anyone looking to add their name? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Mejia, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, and please add the chair. Docket 0277 will be referred to the Committee on Education. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0278?
Thank you. Docket 0278, Councilors Flynn and Flaherty offer the following order for hearing to discuss establishing a traffic master plan for South Boston.
Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you, Councilor Flaherty, for partnering with me on this hearing order.
With the development boom taking place in South Boston, the added density and people will continue to have a major impact, a negative impact, on the quality of life in our neighborhood. There are many large-scale developments being proposed or already approved in South Boston along corridors of the neighborhood, including 776 Summer Street, the Edison Project, the Mary Ellen McCormick Housing redevelopment, the Bayside Expo Center, Washington Village, Fort Point 100-acre plan, multiple proposals along South Boston, Dorchester Avenue corridor, and the South Station air rights project that will soon take place very soon. Every major corridor that connects South Boston to the rest of the city now either has a proposed or approved development. These projects are having a huge impact on the quality of life in our neighborhoods. Instead of looking at these projects piecemeal, like we've done in the past, I want to see a holistic, large-scale master plan where people are working together, transportation officials are working together, so we can address these quality of life issues that are happening throughout the neighborhood. And with all the development that is taking place, I don't think we did a good job of, working with the community, making sure that their voice is heard as it relates to transportation throughout all of South Boston and a master plan. I'm not looking just to do a study. I'm looking for action as part of this. My residents in South Boston deserve it. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Flaherty.
Thank you, Madam President. I echo the comments of my dear friend, neighbor, and colleague. While there have been numerous traffic studies in South Boston over the years, most recently the South Boston Seaport Strategic Transit Plan, there has not been a study that accounts for the cumulative impact of all of the large-scale Article 80 developments that sort of encumber all of the major transportation corridors of the neighborhood. So our residents have spent countless hours in meetings over the last decade on all sorts of development projects. And the reoccurring theme that Ed and I and our other South Boston colleagues here is, has there been a traffic study, and has this study taken into effect other projects that are happening in the neighborhood? And the answer to that question is no. So our residents deserve to fully understand the cumulative impacts of all the traffic and pedestrian safety issues in the community, both short-term, mid-term, and long-term, so that they can make an informed decision as to whether they support or oppose the next project. And through the chair, council colleague, Councilor Flynn, can tell you that the volume of traffic obviously continues to increase in the community as everyone's cutting through the neighborhood to get to the downtown. But he can also attest to the number of permits and zoning board of approval matters that are pending, and more just continues to keep coming. We're experiencing an unprecedented boom, an economic boom in development. All of our colleagues here can attest to Article 80 projects happening in their respective districts, but the time has come to have a comprehensive transportation study on South Boston, particularly as it pertains to the cumulative effects that are happening with more in the pipeline. And so I look forward to partnering with my colleague, Councilor Flynn, on this hearing. Look forward to an expedited hearing so we can get our neighbors the answers that they deserve while they're sort of mulling over many of the different projects that are happening in the community. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to first support my colleagues from South Boston. Very good idea, and it's always good to take into account transportation when we're dealing with large-scale projects. Just a brief note, Kosciuszko Circle, Morrissey Boulevard, that's my district there. So the Bayside property, the Globe property, the Center Court property, the T, and I think I'm missing some. The way we're moving forward with that area of town, and it's been driven because of the good work of the electeds there. My colleagues on the city council, Councilor George, Councilor Sabi George, sorry, and my partners in South Boston, but also the state delegation. The planning for this area now is we're looking to expand on an IAG and call it a CAC, a community advisory committee, I believe. But what the ask is for the people that are coming to weigh in on the development to really put a transportation head on, because we're looking at lowering or raising Kosciuszko Circle. Morrissey Boulevard needs to be raised, and taking into account the neighborhood that I'm from, we've spent, well, I'm 50, my father was born in the neighborhood. We've spent 80 years, 100 years on the other side of the tracks, on the other side of the highway, on the other side of the train station. So looking at this will allow us in the neighborhood to be able to get over to the water that is so close to us. So I just want to get up to commend my colleague and say that because of the work that we're doing, we're able to do in this seat here, that there's going to be a really, really good comprehensive planning initiative that will take one piece of what Councilor Flynn was talking about. So please sign my name on.
Thank you. Anyone else looking to add their name? We have Councilor Baker adding his name. Anyone else? Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Mejia, and Councilor Wu. Docket, thank you all. Docket 0278 will be referred to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0279?
Docket 0279, Councilors Flynn and Janey offer the following order for hearing to discuss security at high-rise garages in the city of Boston.
Thank you so much. Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Madam President. And Madam President, thank you for co-sponsoring this with me. Over a period of 7 months, there were many incidents involving deaths. Earlier this month, another person tried to jump from a 6-story garage. These tragic incidents call attention to the security measures at high-rise garages, as well as a lack of measure at garages that prevent people in distress from jumping and helping them find resources. While most tall buildings and bridges have barriers or fencing to prevent people who are distressed from jumping, parking garages are often accessible to the public with minimum security or barriers, making it harder to prevent people in distress or with mental health issues from jumping. There are measures for suicide prevention at parking garages aside from installing fencing, including using signage to direct people with suicidal thoughts to call the suicide prevention hotline, installing cameras to monitor top levels, putting landscaping to block an open landing area, and training parking garage staff on suicide prevention. We should work with parking garage operators to prevent tragedies like those that have occurred from happening. We should also have a broad conversation to discuss access to mental health resources and counseling, as well as how high-rise facilities such as parking garages can employ measures that help prevent suicides. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much, and I'm really grateful for your leadership and your partnership. Councilor Asabi George.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd like to thank the maker and the sponsors for this hearing order. I think it's important, and I appreciate that Councilor Flynn noted that it's about safety and security in the garages, but access to mental health services and that work, because that's critically important to this conversation. Thank you, Councilor Flynn, and please add my name.
Thank you. Anyone else looking to add their name? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Wu. We've added Councilor Sabi George. Thank you so much. Docket 0279 will be referred to the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services. Moving on to docket 0280.
Docket 0280, Councilors Flynn and Wu offer the following order for hearing to discuss ways to promote a complete and accurate count for the 2020 census in the city of Boston.
Wonderful. Councilor Flynn?
Thank you, Madam President, and I want to say thank you to Councilor Wu for partnering with me on this. Madam President, the Census 2020 is one of the most important issues we will face as a city council. Recently, this week, City Councilor Campbell and Representative Tyler had a working session on the importance of the census. Last week in Chinatown, the Chinese Progressive Association also held a hearing where many of my colleagues were there as well, talking about how important the census is to our city and to our country. The census not only dictates how many elected congressional members we have, but even more importantly than that, it determines the federal resources that come into a city or a state, such as SNAP, the Food Assistance Program that is now being cut by the federal government. Several months ago, the federal government put out a statement that a citizenship question would be asked on the census. Thankfully, that is not part of the census now, but it did have a negative impact on many communities across Boston. As many of you know, I represent a large immigrant community. I represent a large non-English speaking community as well, people speaking Cantonese, Mandarin, and Spanish. What is important about the census is everybody counts, everyone is important, and I just want to work with my colleagues, work with the mayor's office, but work with everybody across the city to make sure everybody's counted, everybody's important in this city, and everyone will be treated with respect and dignity. And part of that process is making sure that they are counted and they participate in the upcoming census. Thank you, Madam President, and again, want to say thank you to my colleague, Councilor Wu, for her work on this issue as well.
Thank you so much, Councilor Flynn. Councilor Wu?
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank our colleague from District 2 for letting me partner on this. You know, the numbers tell the story already. We know historically that Boston has one of the lowest rates of return for the census forms and participation in the country. Of the top 100 U.S. cities, we are of the largest 100 U.S. cities, we're in the top 10 for being hardest to count, given our populations that are multilingual, that may be immigrant residents, that are renters versus homeowners. So there's a lot about our city that where there's a lot at stake in terms of the on-the-ground work of outreach and getting people to understand how to participate and that it's safe and that they're supported, and this is a community-driven effort. So we are fighting every day on the council to make sure that our policies really are recognizing that every person counts, that all means all. And so literally here, everyone has to be counted. And I think the Boston City Council can uniquely add to this effort. Right? There's a whole lot going on with the administration and funding for organizations and a large mobilization. But what we can often add to the conversation is the platform to bring people in. And so we're not going to just do this in City Hall. We're going to have this hearing order and this discussion out in partnership with communities across the city to make sure that we're supporting residents in counting their communities and not just kind of continuing to try to impose resources and hope that it works out. This has got to be from the ground up. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilor Wu. Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Councilor Flynn and Councilor Wu, for your work on this. I'll just add, and it is critical, of course, that everyone get counted, not only for the financial resources that we want to come to our city, but also that we want to come to specific neighborhoods. But in an event that Congresswoman Presley attended at V8 last year to talk about the importance of the census, many spoke about it's not just about the money, it's about being seen. Right? And it's about communities that we talk about, immigrant communities, those that are formerly incarcerated, recognizing that they exist in the city of Boston. I have to actually applaud and thank the mayor with respect to the work that he is doing around the census. He has a whole bunch of committees that cover various industries and various topics, and they have been convened by Sebastian, who is leading that work, and kudos to him. He is doing incredible work. As I sat here, actually, an email from him went out to a few folks related to the census. So there are several committees already that exist, including one for elected officials. And thank you to my colleagues here that have been joining those efforts. I am co-chairing that committee with Representative Tyler, China Tyler, who's been doing remarkable work as well. And so we want to make sure that we do this in partnership and that we're not duplicating efforts. So I hope that we can have a meeting with her, you guys, our respective teams, to talk about how we get all of our elected officials, state as well, federal delegation, who have been attending some of these working sessions and meetings at the State House, all of us together, coming together to continue to do the work in community to make sure that everyone gets counted. So thank you again for your leadership, and look forward to partnering with you guys as well as all of our other colleagues. And please add my name. Thank you, Madam
Thank you so much. Councilor Mejia.
Yes, so I would like to thank Councilor Flynn and Wu for your leadership on this, and I'm really also really excited to join you in this effort. But I also just want to really make a point that there are a lot of people who are undocumented here in the city of Boston who feel afraid, and I think that we're going to have to be really super mindful of how we are going to communicate, given the scenarios that we've already seen here in the city in terms of how we've violated information sharing. And so I think it's just being really mindful of how we're going to bring people in, but also as a city recognize that we have a lot of work to rebuild that trust here. So I'm signing my name in support of that.
Thank you so much. Anyone else looking to add their name? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden. We have Councilor Campbell's name, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flaherty. We obviously have Flynn and Wu, Councilor Mejia, Councilor O'Malley, and please also add the chair. And please also add Councilor Baker. Thank you. I think that makes all of us. Wonderful. Docket 0280 will be referred to the Committee on Census and Redistricting. Moving on to docket 0281.
Docket 0281, Councilor Baker offered the following petition for a special law regarding an act authorizing additional licenses for the sale of alcoholic beverages to be drunk on the premises in Boston.
Councilor Baker.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a home rule petition. This type of legislation has come through this body before. Less about the talk of we need local control. This is our pathway to more licenses. And my idea here was neighborhood licenses, and I put five over 3 years. So, and I was thinking of my neighborhood selfishly because I represent Dorchester, and between District 4 and myself, we have the largest number. I came up with 5 over 3 years, so that would be 15 licenses. I was going to get in and say, you know, Charlestown may need 1 or 2, but then I said, why should I put a number in that isn't my neighborhood? So this document will be amendable. So if in Allston and Brighton you don't want licenses, that number could be 0. In South Boston, if you don't want 5 licenses, your number could be 1. I'm not looking to tell people what they think they need in their neighborhood. The last time this legislation came out, my neighborhood benefited greatly because we had development and places ready to absorb those licenses. But the flip side of that, good for me, wasn't necessarily good for Roxbury, wasn't necessarily good for District 4 and Dorchester, wasn't necessarily good for Mattapan. Now, these licenses, Mattapan, over 3 years, will have 15 licenses, and if nobody in Mattapan is ready when we pass these, and hopefully when we pass the home rule petition, if Mattapan business is not ready, those licenses will be on the shelf specifically for Mattapan, specifically for Roxbury, specifically for Charlestown. Again, I plan on having a working document if people will figure out what they want in their neighborhoods, and then also amendable up at the State House. So if the reps up there want to, I don't want them to come to I think in my neighborhood, 15 over, my neighborhood being Dorchester, my neighborhood, and Council Campbell's neighborhood, 15 is the right number. I'm not looking for them to scale back on those, but they can if they want. So it'll be amendable going up to the State House, and I will be working my state partners, hopefully when we pass this, and hopefully when the mayor signs it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Baker. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise to commend the maker, the District 3 councillor, ask that my name be added. I know it's premature for friendly amendments, but would certainly ask to add. I appreciate West Roxbury being in that. I think Jamaica Plain would make a case as well being included. So perhaps through you to the maker, I have clarity, but I'd certainly ask that as we go through the government ops process.
Can I answer that?
Yes, you can.
I thought Jamaica Plain was there. Don't have a problem with that. We can, so the amendable document, and when we get into it, if Jamaica Plain is not there, was not my intent.
Oh, thank you. And so we will have plenty of discussion for folks who want to advocate for the communities that they represent. Thank you, Councillor Baker. Anyone else looking to add their name? Councillor Arroyo, Councillor Bach, Councillor Campbell, Councillor Asabi George, Councillor Flynn, Councillor Mejia. We have Councillor O'Malley, Councillor Wu, and please add the chair to that. Oh, Breeden, sorry. So that's why you have to raise your hands high so I can see them. All right, Councillor Breeden, please add Councillor Breeden as well. Docket 0281 will be referred to the Committee on Government Operations. Moving on to docket 0282.
Docket 0282, Councillor O'Malley offered the following order for hearing to discuss the location of ambulance garages in the city of Boston.
Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. This is a refile of a hearing order that I introduced with the former District 5 councillor last year, and unfortunately the calendar got ahead of us. We were unable to hold it, but it's a really important and timely one. Rise to speak, of course, of behalf of the unsung heroes of public safety in the city, the paramedics and EMTs, the men and women of Boston EMS. In 2018, Boston EMS transported over 85,000 patients, nearly a quarter of whom were Priority 1 or life-threatening situations. Those Priority 1 situations require a response time of 6 minutes or fewer. And we were able to reach that goal and achieve that goal, largely because of our extremely capable EMS paramedics and EMTs. We have more rapid emergency response times than most cities, even those with larger EMS fleets. This is a testament to the great performance and ability of our city's emergency workers and is deeply commendable. I know all of you share my deep appreciation for the men and women of Boston EMS. And it's time that we serve those heroes the way that they serve us. 9 out of 22 basic life support ambulance units in the city of Boston don't have a station or bay for their response area. These 9 units, referred to as reposted units, are forced to idle on the side of the road or in parking lots for extended periods of time in order to cover their respective areas of service. To maintain proper temperatures for medicines kept on board, as well as to keep life support systems on, ambulances must remain on and idling in between calls. This is a strain on our emergency services and staff, and it deserves to be corrected. Unit A12, which is one of those reposted ambulances in particular, is overstretched. A12 responds to sections of Dorchester, Jamaica Plain, and Roxbury, and it is forced to sit idle at Boston's largest green space, Franklin Park, in order to effectively cover its area of the city. Other units, such as A17 in Rosendale Square and A21 in Roxbury Crossing and Mission Hill, face similar issues. This has many repercussions. Without a dedicated garage or port, shift changes are more difficult and take longer, causing service gaps, forcing Boston EMS to have to leave the area they cover, and there's obviously an environmental concern as well. Boston's Air Pollution Control Office has zeroed in on idling as a key source of airborne pollutants and greenhouse gas emissions, and with good reason. Idling for 2 minutes consumes the same amount of fuel as 2 miles of driving. Idling also puts a physical strain on the ambulances themselves, causing diesel particulate buildup that requires frequent maintenance, posing a significant expense over time. Reposted units cause inequitable service for our constituents, pollution, and can fatigue our EMS workers. But these issues can be resolved. Dedicated garages and ambulance port comes with a relatively low price tag, and such investments in Boston's sustainable infrastructure will show great returns in the years to come, as well as better serve all of our communities. Studies show that ambulance bays improve access to emergency rooms at nearby hospitals, allow EMTs to rest and recuperate in between calls, save fuel emissions, and improve response time. These should be a priority, and I look forward to this hearing to discuss ways that we can provide solutions for our first responders. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Malley. Councillor Flynn.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to say thank you to Councillor O'Malley for this important hearing. I recently had the opportunity to attend the EMS graduation at Faneuil Hall with Councilor Sabi George, and we had an opportunity to talk to some of the dedicated medical professionals that we have in the city, and we're so proud of them. Madam President, in my neighborhood in the South Boston waterfront, as Councilor O'Malley mentioned, we don't have a dedicated garage for an ambulance, and I'm very concerned about the time it does take now to get into a neighborhood that has huge traffic problems, and without a dedicated ambulance. That's a priority of mine. I know it's a priority as well for Councilor Flaherty. So I want to say thank you to Councilor O'Malley for his great work on this, and I look forward to working with you to make sure we have dedicated garages in every neighborhood or where they're desperately needed. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Councilor Flynn. Anyone else looking to add their name? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Wu, and please also add the chair. Docket 0282 will be referred to the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services. Moving on to docket 0283. Madam Clerk, could you please read it?
Thank you, Madam President. Docket 0283, Councilor O'Malley offered the following order for hearing to discuss which city, state, or quasi-public agencies are responsible for snow removal at certain public properties.
Councilor O'Malley.
To quote poet, philosopher Michael Scott, I'm not superstitious, I'm only a little stitious, and that's why I'm somewhat hesitant in introducing this hearing order, as it's been a relatively mild winter. But nevertheless, I think it's important to have this conversation, as I've introduced a number of times, where we convene the relevant stakeholders, folks from Mass DOT, folks from the MBTA, folks from Boston Parks, Boston Public Schools, and DPW, to identify areas where the jurisdiction of who has ownership in terms of clearing the sidewalks, clearing the roads, is addressed head-on. It should be noted that I first introduced this hearing order in 2012. That winter we had 12 inches of snow. I did not introduce this hearing order in 2015 when we had 113 inches of snow. So hopefully the tradition will continue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Edwards, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. I rise in support of my colleague, and I wanted to thank you for your leadership again in convening the stakeholders. I'm rising particularly because this speaks to the stretch, the Greenway in East Boston, where it's checkered. On one side is Massport, then there's a stretch that's the city, then you continue with Massport, and you continue with Massport, and then you go back to the city. And we also include other cities as well. Hopefully one day we'll be going all the way out to Winthrop. But ultimately, when I run the Greenway, it's very clear who is or isn't doing their job. And so this conversation is hopefully going to make sure we have a clear Greenway in East Boston and throughout, but also it's going to convene the stakeholders and talk about how collectively we need to be doing our part. So thank you so much for your leadership.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Please add my name.
Okay. Anyone else looking to add their name? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell. We have Councilor Edwards, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Wu, and please also add the chair. Docket 0283 will be referred to the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services. I've been informed by the clerk that Councilor Flynn is moving for substitution for docket 0284. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right. Wonderful. We will move on, but first, before you go, Councilor Flynn, we're going to have our clerk read the docket. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0284?
Docket 0284, Councilor Flynn offered the following resolution recognizing Braille Literacy Month.
Wonderful. Councilor Flynn.
Thank you, Madam President. And Madam President, may I add Councilor Edwards on as an original co-sponsor?
Any objections? No objections? So added.
Thank you, Madam President. January is designated as National Braille Literacy Month to promote and raise awareness of the importance of the Braille Code to the blind and visually impaired community. Braille literacy is an important way for those with visual disabilities to attain independence and employment. The National Federation for the Blind was founded as a positive correlation between those who are literate in Braille and those who achieve higher education and better employment outcomes. Yet in recent years, Braille literacy has fallen among the blind and with those with visual disabilities as a result of increased reliance on audio and text-to-speech technology. We have Perkins School for the Blind in Greater Boston, which provides great education for students who are blind or visually impaired, and it is the oldest school in the country. Actually, it started in South Boston, and now it's located in Watertown. I hope that we can suspend the rules and pass this resolution so that we can affirm the City Council's support for the blind and visually impaired community and recognize and honor January as Braille Literacy Month for the City of Boston. And I want to also recognize the tremendous work of our former colleague, Councilor Zakem, as the Chair of Civil Rights. I'm proud to be the Vice Chair, now working with Councilor Mejia as the Chair. But the work of the City Council in supporting people with disabilities has always been a cornerstone of this body, and I look forward to working with everybody so persons with disabilities will get the services that they need. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to thank Councillor Flynn for inviting me to be a co-sponsor on this. As Councillor Flynn and I have worked a great deal on dealing with the issues of folks having access not only to City Council, but individuals with disabilities feeling that they are seen, heard, and valued. I wanted to just add my name and note that not only do I support your leadership, but I think this is also a call to action on behalf of the City Council to assess ourselves again. Are we as accessible as we should be, especially to those of us in our community who are blind? I would look to us to analyze very small things, even our business cards. We could actually have them printed in Braille. Another thing that we looked at, and it was actually brought up during the hearing that we co-hosted, I believe, on access to the City Council for folks who have disabilities, was looking at the way that we listed the offices and the elevators. Luckily, we now have those larger print ones that run the side, but for a while it was just at the very top, and many people who are visually impaired noted that they couldn't see it. Finally, one thing that we still need to work on, and I wanted to make sure that we do this year, is the steps. Those stairs that when we're coming down the brick steps, if you are visually impaired, it's very difficult, even when we're not visually impaired, to see when one step ends and one step begins on the brick steps that we have entering our building and also on the mezzanine. So small things such as a strip, just acknowledging that we could be making ourselves more accessible. So I completely support Councillor Flynn's leadership in recognizing that people need to be seen and heard. I also value the very culture and the very, I think not only culture, but also there's a way in which people move when they have a language, when they have a way of moving around. So there's a huge culture around ASL. I'm a student now of ASL, but also in Braille. And so when you lose that language skill, you also lose a section of culture as well. So it's a matter of cultural preservation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Madam President. I'd first like to support my colleagues. Thank you for doing this. My oldest brother was blind, was a graduate from Perkins School of the Blind. He was hands down the most well-read in my family. That might be like being the smartest in the dumbest class. I don't know, but he was an exceptional person. He was a musician. He repaired furniture. He tuned pianos. He was awesome. So thank you for bringing my brother into my life today. Thank you.
Amen. Councillor Mejia.
Yes, I know that this hearing order is specifically in regards to the visually impaired, but I just want to advocate that if we're going to be talking about access and accessibility here in the city, is that we have a young person who's one of our youth liaisons, and there's no handicap button for the door to open. So I just want to put that out there in the record, that if we're going to talk about creating this to be more accessible, that there's other layers that we might want to consider as well.
Thank you, Councillor Mejia. Councillor Sabi George.
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to first have my name added and thank Councillor Flynn and, where is it? Just Councillor Flynn for offering this resolution before us today, and Councillor Edwards. I would like to share that over the last few summers, we have had an intern from the Mass Commission for the Blind intern in our office. It is a paid internship program. It is a fabulous internship program that comes with lots of supports. And we will, again, this spring, host the Mass Commission for the Blind to speak to all offices who have an interest in hiring an intern this coming summer. So as this is an opportunity to recognize this month, and I just want to put that out there, an early plug, so when you get the email to come to our session, I hope that you'll consider joining us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilor Flynn, you have the floor again.
Yeah, thank you. I apologize for speaking again. Madam President, I just also want to recognize the tremendous work of the Disability Commission from the Mayor's office. I work closely with them. I should have mentioned them at the beginning, but I just wanted to let this dedicated and professional staff know at that department that they're doing an outstanding job, and we look forward to working with them over the next 2 years. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. And for clarification, Councilor Mejia, did you want to add your name to the resolution? Wonderful. Anyone else looking to add their name? Councilor Arroyo, we have you. Councilor Baker, thank you so much. Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell, we have Councilor Edwards, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Mejia's added her name, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, and please add the chair. Councilor Flynn moves for suspension of the rules and seeks adoption of docket 0284. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. The rules have been suspended and the resolution has been adopted. Moving on to docket 0285.
Docket 0285, Councilor Edwards and Wu offer the following order for hearing regarding transportation benefits.
Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm pleased to kick off, I think, a very important conversation about transportation that deeply involves our business community. Transportation benefit ordinances are not new. There are many cities that already have them, such as Seattle, Los Angeles, San Francisco, DC, New York, and the entire state of New Jersey. So essentially, what does it do? It basically requires employers, and in this case it would be employers in Boston, to give this as an option, as a benefit to their workers. Amen. For a pre-tax benefit, essentially to pay for the T-Pass or for their commuter rail pass. We already have this actually in the city of Boston, and all of the workers who work for the city of Boston have this as an option. And what we're asking for, and what we would want, is for employers to at least give that option to their workers. I know people are critical because they feel like it's one more mandate on the business community. But the mandate is really just to say, give them an option to have a pre-tax benefit. It does not cost the employers anything unless they have a huge amount of employees and they have an administrative cost. But it could actually save employees a lot of money. An example of that is for many people who feel pushed out of Boston right now, they now have to have longer commutes. So they went to another place in the suburbs, for example, to save money on rent or mortgage. So they're further away, but now their commuter costs have gone up if they're taking the commuter rail, which could be hundreds of dollars a month that they didn't have to pay before. This would be a pre-tax benefit to them, allowing for their taxable income to go down while their income pays for the commuter rail pass. So this is a huge benefit and actually helps people in terms of taxes. And I believe, as a leader, the city of Boston, already having issues with congestion, with traffic, this is something that we should be requiring employers to offer, Boston-based employers, so that folks can get here and also get a tax break. And hopefully it helps with the congestion and transportation. Now, this is not going to fix our transportation infrastructure. Let's be clear. Our brothers and sisters in the State House are working on that right now. I'll give a shout out to my delegation members, Vice Chair of Transportation, Adrian Madro, and Chair of Transportation in the Senate, Joe Boncore. So we're excited to see what the State House does to help us move and to provide their infrastructure. But for right now, I think the city of Boston should at least say everyone could be offered this benefit. And yes, the Chamber of Commerce has come out and said this is already offered by a lot of people. So why bother to have it mandated? Because, well, it's about those who aren't offering it, and it's about setting a floor. The mandate is just for a benefit. And if we set the floor, I think in this economy, this booming economy, a lot of employers are going to be competitive about how they actually benefit people in terms of transportation. So let's set the floor, let's require this benefit, let's hopefully clear out some of the congestion, and let's give workers a tax break. I think it makes a lot of sense. I wish I was as eloquent as Councilor O'Malley and the fiscal conservative, so on and so forth. I won't do that. That's his line. But I will have to say, when writing this, we were inspired by that thought. So I wanted to acknowledge his leadership already in providing infrastructure for the city to build appropriately. So hopefully we will require this benefit so that people can drive or not drive into the city of Boston. So thank you, Councilor O'Malley, and of course thank my co-sponsor, Councilor Wu, whose leadership in transportation conversations along with the chair in equity and looking at busing has also fed into this as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilor Wu.
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you to my sponsor, co-sponsor, Councilor Edwards on this. This is the lowest of the low-hanging fruit when it comes to the changes that we should be making for traffic and congestion and transportation. And I am so excited that we'll be moving forward with this early in the year. We know from the data that, and we know from the experience of our residents in our neighborhoods, that a large part of the traffic, not just on the main thoroughfares, but on now almost all of our residential side streets, comes from people trying to get to work, and often from people outside Boston trying to get to work in Boston or near Boston. So the decisions that we're making in terms of the commute and how employers are involved in that conversation have tremendous impacts all throughout the neighborhoods. So I also want to note, I've had some conversations. I happened to meet the folks who work at the MBTA on their PERC program. We met on the Orange Line, and it was lovely, and they're working really, really hard. And this hopefully will help amplify their efforts too. So I know they'll be great at coming in and explaining how employers can plug in, how we can continue to expand this. And then finally, I just want to add that this is a parallel track. I am so excited to be doing this in the short term, but we are still moving towards a world where this will not be necessary whatsoever, because there will be no need for payment and passes on the T. So we're still trying to free the T, and we'll hear more about that in future council sessions. But in the meantime, this is something that would be transformational in the very, very short term.
Thank you so much, Councilor Wu. Councilor Mejia.
Yeah, so I'm excited to have this conversation, and thank both Councilor Lydia Edwards and Michelle Wu for their leadership on this. And I would just like to add that there are a lot of people who are no longer able to live in Boston because they've been displaced and have been gentrified out, and who are commuting from Brockton but still working here. So when we're looking at what these tax credits are going to look like, I just want to make sure that we do not forget those folks who are living in other places because they can no longer afford to live here.
Thank you so much. Anyone looking to add their name? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Mejia, Councilor O'Malley, and please also add the chair. Docket 0285 will be referred to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Moving on to docket 0286, Madam Clerk.
Docket 0286, Councilors Edwards and Sabi George offer the following order for hearing regarding parking reform.
Thank you. Councilor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I'd first like to suspend the rules and add Councilor Campbell as an original co-sponsor.
Thank you. Any objections? Hearing none, the rules have been suspended, and Councilor Campbell is a third co-sponsor.
I wanted to note that Councilor Campbell had been a sponsor when we initially filed this last year, and so I had unintentionally left her name out when coming to refile this. As noted by our president, this is a refile. This is part of the conversation that's kicked off about many of our neighborhood issues with parking. I don't know of many neighborhoods that don't have this issue, but at the end of the day, it has a lot to do with planning, it has a lot to do with creativity, and it's going to require all hands on deck to be part of this. We want to look at how do we plan accordingly for the cars in the city, but also how do we make sure that we are planning accordingly for people to be able to come home at night and be able to just go home into their buildings, into wherever they're living, without having to circle the block 1,000 times. I actually think in many cases we end up with a lot of carbon monoxide in our streets and a lot of idling cars just for looking for parking. But this conversation is more comprehensive. We want everything on the table. We want to look at metered parking in East Boston. We are by the airport. We have 4 T stations. We do not have 1 meter. in East Boston. And so what that does encourage folks from other cities and towns to come in and park on our city streets and then take our public transportation and, well, they get that for free because they have the 2-hour parking. But if you park at 4 o'clock, not that I'm encouraging this, you get from 4 to whenever you come home from the theater for free in the city of Boston. But for those of us who live in East Boston, we need those streets. So we want to look at metered parking. We want to look at angled parking, how we're going to plan for that in our neighborhoods. We want to look at visitor parking, looking at healthcare workers. And also one of the things that came to my attention last year was while we have an incredible shelter, Crossroads Shelter in East Boston, a woman came to us because she had a boot on her car. She had been assigned to the shelter from across the state, and that's not something she can control. The only thing she had was her car, which is what she was living in. But because she could not get an East Boston resident sticker, we ticketed her into the point that she lost the only thing she had. And the only form of income she had was to drive as an Uber driver. So these are things that the city of Boston needs to talk about in terms of how we're going to treat our most vulnerable, how we're going to plan for all of our families to be able to come home at night and to stop idling around our neighborhoods. So I look forward to having this conversation this year.
Thank you. Did one of the other co-sponsors want to speak? No. Good. Campbell.
I'll just quickly thank Councilor Salvatore and Councilor Edwards for the continued partnership in this, on this particular topic. And I think every district councilor in particular, you know, these issues are at the top of the list, whether it is parking reform, can't park, speeding cars, congested streets, ways, you name it. So I'm excited to have a comprehensive conversation with respect to all of the pieces that are in the hearing order, and also creating a space for residents and other councilors to bring concerns for their specific neighborhoods, and then getting creative around the response, because it shows up differently sometimes depending on the district, depending on the population, depending on the density, et cetera. So looking forward to the conversation, and I thank my co-sponsors. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Councilor Mejia.
Yes, thank you, Councilor Edwards and Councilor Asabi George, for your leadership in this. I just want to just quickly uplift that when I think about parking, I think that we also need to be mindful that for some folks, it's a difference between paying a $40 ticket or putting food on your table. So we need to be really mindful of how we're ticketing folks. But I just think it's also really interesting is that depending on where you happen to park in the city, that's what your fees cost. So like if I park on Newberry Street, it's X amount of dollars, but if I park in Mattapan or in Dorchester, the fees tend to differ depending on where you go. And I think that often prohibits people from low economic statuses to be able to park in certain places of the city. So I just would like to uplift that as an issue of concern as we're looking at this issue of parking reform.
Thank you so much. Anyone looking to add their names? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Baker, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden. We have the 3 co-sponsors. Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Mejia, Councilor O'Malley, Councilor Wu, and please also add the chair. Docket 0286 will be referred to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Moving on to docket 0287.
Docket 0287, Councilor Edwards offered the following order for hearing regarding energy distribution in East Boston and in the location, need, and safety of a proposed substation in the Eagle Hill neighborhood.
Thank you. Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam President. I want to first thank my colleagues who have been overwhelmingly supportive of this conversation. This is a necessary conversation because many of us who live in East Boston and many of us who are part of the movement for a greener Boston are concerned about the need at all for a substation in the middle of an environmental justice community. The proposed substation is going to be next to the proposed police station that we're going to build. It is also near a densely packed neighborhood that is very diverse and near a playground. And all of that, for a moment aside, a lot of people are not convinced it's even necessary. We are not actually understanding why we need a substation, and particularly this location in East Boston. We feel it's a matter of environmental justice. It's very clear from the EFSB reports this is in a flood zone, and based on the recent designs of the substation, it will flood. So we're talking about a permanent infrastructure that's supposed to fulfill a need that we're not quite convinced actually happens, and a location that is actually very concerning to a lot of people whose children play near that. But also add to the fact the process was extremely flawed. It was run by Eversource. And for many of us, we felt that that was not an inclusive process. It was actually discriminatory to many of my constituents in East Boston who do not speak English as a first language. It actually violated the language access policy and guidelines established by the Executive Office of Administration and Finance. So, as in, each of one of the hearings that they had on this did not include interpretation in any way, shape, or form, which meant that many people who are concerned and many of the people who live in this particular area of East Boston who are Latino, who do not speak English as a first language, were not included in that process. They could not comment, they could not criticize, they could not ask questions. A silencing of such a large population on something that is permanent and could impact their health is discriminatory, it's wrong, and the process was failed. So I'm standing here today to ask that we revisit this decision, not only because I don't believe that we were given all the facts that we needed as a city council when this land was surplused, but also a new fact has emerged. We learned that less than a half-mile away, Massport is building a substation on airport land that is not in a flood zone, that is protected, that's not where children play. And so the question for us is, why does Eversource need 2 substations? Less than a half-mile away, one in a densely populated neighborhood. If at anything, take this opportunity to build an infrastructure that can support the airport and the neighborhood at the same time. So what we're asking for is for real conversation. Right now, Eversource is already talking about the design. We in East Boston have rejected the design and we reject the substation. We're asking for a true vetting, and I expect my colleagues who have been incredibly supportive to be there to ask these questions. Because if it's not East Boston, it could be South Boston, it could be West Roxbury. These are questions we need to be asking in general if we're going to be especially putting things on city land that we surplused in an environmental justice area, densely populated, where children play, and the community itself is not sold on it, and the community itself was silenced in the process. How could we support this? So I'm here today introducing this very important hearing order. I look forward to working with my colleagues. I also look forward to having this hearing in that beautiful community of East Boston with translation services.
Wonderful, thank you so much. Anyone else looking to add their name? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Campbell, Councilor Sabi George, Councilor Braden, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Mejia, Councilor O'Malley, and Councilor Wu. Please also add the chair, and Councilor Bach. Thank you so much. Docket 0287 will be referred to the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services. Moving on to docket 0288. Madam Clerk, could you please read the docket?
Docket 0288. No, 87. No, 88. I'm sorry. Docket 0288. Councilor O'Malley offered the following order for hearing regarding recycling, composting, and reducing trash in the city of Boston.
Wonderful. Councilor O'Malley.
Thank you, Madam President. Whenever I'm asked what the role of a city councilor is, I typically say it's really a dual role. It's working on those quality of life issues, making sure graffiti's cleaned and streets are swept and trash is picked up, and also the bigger picture issues that drive so much of our work, and be it education, be it the environment, be it public safety, housing. And the hearing order today really touches on all of those things. When I was first elected to this body, when my first budget season was 2011, which was 9 years ago, and isn't that long of a time, but it really, just to put things in perspective, less than a decade ago, when I was going through the budget process, we had the DPW folks come, and I asked what the cost per tonnage for our trash pickup. And I want to say it was in the $80. I don't remember the exact figure, maybe $86, $87 per ton. And I asked what the revenue was being generated for collecting recycling. And those days, less than 10 years ago, we were generating revenue. It wasn't a tremendous amount of revenue. It was probably $5 or $6 per ton. I'm sure the clerk can remember. She was serving in this role in those days. But we were getting paid for our recycling efforts. We've seen that change, and we've seen recycling become less of a valuable commodity, but still it was more advantageous to recycle than it was to throw away trash. In 2017, when many of you joined this, a majority of this council joined this board, we were paying at that point, it was 6 years after the date I referenced, we were paying for our recycling, and we were paying about $200,000 for our recycling citywide, 200 grand. Again, that's not, you know, chopped liver, but that's in a $3 billion budget, that's not a bad investment. Does anyone want to take a guess of what we will be paying this year for our recycling? It's more than 200,000. $6 million. It's now more expensive to pick up recycling than it is to pick up trash. That $86 or $87 per ton that we were paying for trash pickup in 2011, it's gone up, but it's gone up. It's in the low 90s or the mid 90s. It might be $95. Yet it's going to be $120 or $125 per ton for our recycling. Think about that for a moment. There are a whole host of reasons it's happening for this, not the least of which is that China is no longer accepting foreign recycling. They used to, and they had a pretty reasonable contamination rate, 5 to 10% they would accept. Our rate is actually pretty good comparatively. It was about 3%, so we were able to have a relationship in place where we'd actually keep costs lower and sometimes, in earlier days, earn a profit. The Chinese market has essentially shut down all international, particularly recycling products from the United States. They do have a very small contamination that they will allow, about half of 1%, which obviously we couldn't accommodate even if they were looking to. So what's happening? Around the state, there are a lot of municipalities in 2020, when we know that climate justice is a public health emergency, are no longer recycling. They're burying their recycling into their landfills because it's cheaper. And I get that, and I am so grateful that this administration, this mayor has said that's not going to happen. We are going to pay the extra fee to keep the recycling. But we need to have some tough conversations. We need to talk about the fact that single-stream recycling, while convenient and while wonderful for getting people to understand what it means to recycle and how important it is, it doesn't work because we are contaminating things and we're mixing things. So we've got some issues such as textiles, which are still worth a lot of money as a commodity, and glass, which is actually pretty good, although in many cases now it's more expensive to recycle glass in the current market than it is to produce glass. But then you've got food scraps and you've got plastics that are being thrown into the recycle bin, which contaminate it and can make the attributes or the parts of the recycling that are actually worth money rendered worthless. So we have to talk about maybe moving away from single-stream recycling. One way we can do that, we had a hearing order in this body last year. Those who were serving all supported it, to have a separate textile recycling, which is being done at no cost, not low cost, no cost to municipalities. We could put an RFP out and there would be a number of firms that would want to do it because it's such a valuable commodity. We also pushed, as we have for many, many years, starting with the former at-large counselor who's now serving in Congress, with the District 5 counselor's older brother who served and working on this with me to get composting pickup. We finally have an RFP ready to go as it relates to curbside composting. But that's something, that's a quarter of our recycling could be compostable. I mean, that's a significant way that we can address some savings. Public education has to be part of this. Of all of our trash, nearly 3/4 could be recycled. That's a staggering statistic, that we're putting 3 out of every 4 things that go into our waste stream could be recycled. But we have to have these tough conversations about what that means. We have to look at moving away from single stream. We have to have a conversation about creating our own municipal recycling plant. Other cities have done it. Large-scale cities like Seattle have done it. Small-scale town like Wellesley, Massachusetts, which admittedly has a much higher tax base, but Wellesley has its own recycling system. Other smaller towns that are less affluent than Boston have done it. We should be having this conversation as well as we go forward. We have to talk about working with our partners in the state as it relates to extended producer responsibility policies, refillable programs like Coffee Cup Collection and Grainmaker in Boston, things that are already working. We need to not only address and highlight, but really implement. This is a huge issue. This is not only an environmental issue, although it is one. This is not only a public safety issue or a public health issue, although it is one. It's really a quality of life issue. And the most important role we all have, the 13 of us all have, is to be fiscal stewards of the taxpayers' money. Well, right now, we're not getting a good deal for our taxpayers. We're doing the right thing, because I will, mark my words, I'll make sure that we have recycling programs here in Boston. But we need to be more efficient. We need to be more effective if we have these conversations. So let's have a hearing. Let's bring in the stakeholders. Let's bring in the advocates. Let's have some tough conversations, make some tough decisions, and really address that. And then not only will we save taxpayer money, But we also will increase our recycling rate because despite all this, despite the fact that we live in the Athens of America, despite the fact that people recognize this existential threat that we are dealing with as it relates to climate, 1 out of every 4 Bostonians recycle, which means 3 out of every 4 Bostonians don't. And that figure corresponds with the 3 out of 4 things that are recyclable that go into our waste stream. So let's get to work. This body can lead on this, and we can really be the leader across not only the Commonwealth, but the United States. Looking forward to getting to work with each and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Would you like to speak on this?
Yes, please. I just
Councilor
want to
Baker.
thank you, Madam President. Just want to make one point. Thank you for leading on this, Councilor O'Malley. The one thing that I would like to see happen, we've talked about this in the past, is if we can get rid of the organics, the compost, I think it's 25% or more. But there are examples of actual digesters that we could build in the city of Boston, and it would do 2 things. We would be in control of our own destiny, meaning we would be able to control that price moving into the future. We would create jobs and also be able, and they're good jobs. So this is something that, with Councilor O'Malley, I've been talking about for a couple of years. So when we have this discussion, it has to be about composting, a big part of it, and we should be looking at building that infrastructure for the composting. Thank you. And please sign me on.
Thank you. Councilor Campbell.
Thank you, Madam President. I just wanted to thank Councilor O'Malley for his leadership on these issues in the building, outside the building. It's just, you're remarkable, frankly. Not only in talking about the issues, but coming up with solutions, doing the research around best practices across the country and the world to address the problem. But one of the things that you spoke of that I wanted to really applaud is the public information and knowledge piece, because I think if you sort of look at different neighborhoods, who participates, who doesn't, I don't know that people see the value in it. I don't know that they connect it to their livelihood, the livelihood of their community, the finances of the city of Boston, their tax-paying dollars, all of that you brought up in this hearing order I think are so critical. So look forward to engaging with you and with the body, specifically when it comes to certain neighborhoods, around these conversations. And I think that goes to the larger point of climate change, climate justice, certain communities that don't necessarily participate in the larger conversations, but want to, or maybe are doing it in a siloed way. So excited to work with you on this hearing order, but also bringing it outside of this space. And thank you for your leadership.
Thank you,
Madam
Councilor.
President.
And add your name? Yes. And so we're adding Councilor Baker and Campbell. Anyone else? Councilor Arroyo, Councilor Bach, Councilor Braden, Councilor Edwards, Councilor Asabi George, Councilor Flaherty, Councilor Flynn, Councilor Mejia, Councilor Wu, and please also add the chair. Docket 0288 will be referred to the Committee on Environment, Resiliency, and Parks. Now, we're moving on to personnel orders. Madam Clerk, could you please read docket 0290?
Docket 0290, Councilor Janey for Councilor Braden.
Councilor Braden seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0290. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0290 has been passed.
Docket 0291, Councilor Janey for Councilor Braden.
Councilor Braden seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0291. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Docket 0291 has been passed. Thank you. Moving on to late files, I am informed by the clerk that there are none. Excellent. Everyone gets a gold star. Wonderful. Great. Councilor Asabi George, did you want to speak? When we're ready. So we're not there yet. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to the green sheets. Anyone wishing to remove a matter from the green sheets? Yes. Wonderful.
Committee of the Whole, docket 0245, page 9 of 9 in the green sheets, please.
Yes, and Madam Clerk, if you could please read that into the record.
Thank you, Madam President. In the Committee of the Whole, docket 0245, sponsored by Councilor Baker, ordinance amending Chapter 2-15.3 of the City of Boston Code, ordinances regarding lobbyist registration and regulation. It was filed, referred to committee on January 15th, 2020.
Councilor Baker, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President. And this was the amendment that I brought to the floor, it seems like 10 years ago, but it was 2 weeks ago, I think. It's a technical change for the lobbying ordinance that was put forth, and it will not affect the legislation. Okay? Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Counselor Baker seeks suspension of the rules and passage of docket 0245. All those in favor? So for clarification, I see some folks are confused. Do you want
me to
Yes,
speak
Counselor Baker, can you?
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll read my talking points from the amendment. We are submitting this late file today, The IT department of the City of Boston created an online portal for the registration and reporting for lobbyists, lobbying entities, and clients. All activities required by this ordinance are processed and completed electronically. Upon registration, each lobbyist, lobbying entity, and client are assigned a registration number, which they will use as long as they are engaged in the lobbying with the City of Boston. The language we are seeking to delete is necessary to allow the system to create active and inactive designations. Once someone is terminated, they are unable to file their quarterly reports for each reporting period, which is the overall purpose of this legislation. The city's quarterly reporting is twice as much as a... So basically what's happening, at the end of the year, people that have registered to be a lobbyist, they're automatically getting knocked off and becoming inactive. And because it's a online registration, you're unable to file your report. So going into January, everybody that lobbied last year, they're unable to file their reports. So this change would help the IT department enable that website or link that you look at to be able to decipher between active and inactive.
Thank you so much.
I think I have that right.
Right. So just to be simple and crystal clear, our rules that we adopted earlier in the meeting did not reflect the change of the ordinance that we passed last session. So what Councilor Baker is asking is that we're updating that particular rule. It's Rule 44, I believe, to reflect the new language.
This is lobbying registration ordinance.
Great.
So within that ordinance, the language created a glitch for the IT department. So when we change this language, it will allow the IT department, and I'd rather a hammer in my hand than a computer, so I'm doing the best I can at this one here. This allows the IT department to fix that language, and people won't automatically at the end of the year become inactive.
Okay.
Okay?
If you want to recess.
We'll take a quick recess. Yeah. We're now back in session. If all counselors could take their seats. I've been informed by the clerk that Counselor Baker wishes to withdraw docket 0245. That docket will remain in the Committee of GovOps. Will be referred, assigned to the Committee of GovOps. So now we will, people remember last week, or last time, we had a bunch of hearing orders and resolutions and ordinances that got assigned to the Committee on the Whole. They will now be reassigned. I will ask our clerk to please read the dockets for us.
And just so you can follow along, you could just open your green sheets, and you can follow all of the dockets that will be placed. Docket 0100. Docket 0100 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Government Operations. Docket 0101. Docket 0101 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services. Docket 0102. Docket 0102 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Public Health. Dockets 0103 through 0140 was assigned. Docket 0103 through docket 0140 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Docket number 0191. Docket 0191 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Ways and Means. Docket 0192. Docket 0192 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee of Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Docket number 0193. Docket 0193 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Environment, Resiliency, and Parks. Docket number 0194. Docket 0194 was assigned to the Committee of the Whole, from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Docket number 0195. Docket 0195 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Docket number 0217. Docket 0217 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services. Docket number 0218. Docket 0218 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee of Housing and Community Development. Docket number 0219. Docket 00219 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Planning, Development, and Transportation. Docket number 0220. Docket 0220 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on City and Neighborhood Services. Docket number 0221. Docket 0221 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Docket number 0222. Docket number 0222 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Small Business and Workforce. Docket 0223. Docket 0223 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Public Health. Dockets 0224. Docket 0224 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Government Operations. Docket 0225. Docket 0225 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee of Government Operations. Docket 0226. Docket 0226 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Government Operations. Docket 0227. Docket 0227 was assigned to the Committee of the Whole from the Committee of the Whole to Committee on Government Operations. Docket 0228. Docket 0228 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Public Safety and Criminal Justice. Docket 0230. Docket 0230 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Civil Rights. Docket 0232. Docket 032 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Government Operations. Docket 0233. Docket 0233 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Government Operations. Docket 0234 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Pilot Reform. And docket 0235 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Government Operations.
Thank you so much. Madam Clerk, I have been informed, moving on to the consent agenda, I've been informed by the clerk that there is one addition to the consent agenda. Hearing no objections, the matter will be...
Docket 0227 was Government Operations.
Should that be assigned perhaps to the...
Oh, that's, you have to talk to the President.
No, we're going to leave it in the Committee of Government Ops
Any
right now.
Hearing order regarding the opioid crisis?
227?
227. It's not an ordinance, as is 225 and 226.
Docket 02, let me see it on the... green sheets. So in the green sheets, it says it's an order, not an ordinance. Oh, yes. A working session. Oh, yes, so we will do it in GovOps because it was a working session. Do you want it, you just want to have the discussion?
Sorry for the interruption. It was actually was refiled. We had edited, amended it to be a hearing order, but it's still a hearing order or a working session, not based on an ordinance.
Wonderful.
Committee on Public Health.
Thank you so much, Councilor Sabi George, for the clarification. We will, Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask you to reread that docket 0227 and that it will be assigned from the Committee of the Whole into the Committee of Public Health. Could you just read that into the record so that it's nice and clear?
Thank you.
Thank you, Sabi George.
Docket number 0227. Docket number 0227 was assigned from the Committee of the Whole to the Committee on Public Health.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Councilor Edwards.
Thank you, Madam President. Just a point of clarification to Madam Clerk. I apologize, I missed, it's docket 0231, where it had been assigned.
Docket 2, so that's going to remain in the Committee of the Whole?
Okay.
So it was from the Committee of the Whole and it will remain in the Committee of the Whole. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wonderful. I've been in, who did you want to speak to this? Councilor Wu?
And I apologize, I should have read this during the break, but I was just looking back at docket number 0268, Councilor Sabi George's hearing on the Boston Public Schools transportation budget, and reading through the docket more clearly, and was wondering, because now there is a new post-audit committee, if it could potentially be jointly assigned to Ways and Means and post-audit, because it is both looking backwards and forwards. I'm just throwing that out there, but if you want to discuss more, we could go into recess.
Thank you for that. For now, we're going to leave it in the Committee of Ways and Means. Certainly would hope that you, as Chair of Post Audit, would participate in that. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the consent agenda. I've been informed by the clerk that there is one addition to the consent agenda. Hearing no objections, the matter will be added. The Chair now moves for adoption of the consent agenda. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. We're going to move on to announcements. Councilor Sabi George.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. I just want to announce and share that this evening is the Mayor's annual homeless census count. It is a point-in-time count where we are across the city reaching out and connecting with individuals who are experiencing homelessness. It happens in sort of public spaces, and we are across the city doing this count. I've participated the last few years and will so this evening. We meet here at City Hall on the mezzanine second floor area at 10 p.m. So I hope that you'll join us. It does turn into be a late and it will be a cold evening. Also, during this time, there is a point-in-time count that happens across shelters and hospitals and other locations across the city and across the state. So I invite you all to join Mayor Walsh, myself this evening for this annual census, homeless census. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Councilor Flaherty?
Thank you, Madam President. I know a resolution was circulated by our colleague, City Councilor Matt O'Malley, on behalf of Councilor Flynn and I, on behalf of the entire council, want to take this opportunity to publicly wish Jimmy Donnelly a happy 42nd birthday. Let him know that we're thinking of him, we're praying for him. He's been ill, and let him know that we appreciate all the work that he's done for all of us, our staffs, and the residents. No one runs the Dock Square Garage better than Jimmy Donnelly. So thank you, Jimmy, for your great work, for your time and talents, but most importantly, happy birthday, happy 42nd birthday on behalf of all of us here on the Boston City Council and our staffs. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Councilor Flynn?
Thank you, Madam President. I also want to echo what Councilor Flaherty said about our good friend Jimmy Donnelly on his 42nd birthday. Jimmy's a tremendous example of what a dedicated City of Boston official, employee is all about. Hardworking, takes his job serious, always helping people, treats everybody with respect and kindness, and proud that Jimmy's a friend of mine. He has many friends in this audience, including our City Council, including my friend Kenny and Neil up there as well. But we want to wish Jimmy a happy birthday, and we hope he's feeling better. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you so much. Councilor O'Malley?
Thank you, Madam President. I ask for unanimous consent to make a brief statement.
You have it. Thank you.
Ditto, we love you, Jimmy, and we're all thinking about you, and happy birthday, buddy. That's not the brief statement. This is the brief statement, is that one of the people for whom we'll be closing in memory of today is a very dear friend to me and my family, whom we lost 2 weeks ago. Ed Mazza is his name, and I know his family's watching this, so I just wanted to very, very briefly just talk about what a great guy we have, and a huge loss to West Roxbury. We've known the Mazza family our entire lives. We went to school together, and Ed's was always just a happy, kind, funny, dry, just tremendous guy. And I would see him walking around our neighborhood. He lives 2 blocks away. He lived 2 blocks away from Catherine and I. And seeing him was always a highlight and often tough days. We can have tough days in this business. And he's just a giant in the neighborhood. He's going to be deeply and dearly missed. So I just wanted to thank his family, who I know is watching, and thank all of you for joining me in closing tonight's meeting in his memory. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor O'Malley. Councilor Baker?
Thank you, Madam President. Like Councilor O'Malley, I just want to mention someone's name, and he was connected on earlier because of the the thing that my brother John came up with, this gentleman was my brother's drummer, Jake Trainer, son of South Boston, worked for the fire department. They were big in the music scene in Dorchester and South Boston back in 70s, 80s, and he was a fabulous artist also. I would also like to say, if anybody wants to come see a good development, a conscious developer looks to do something that really works with the neighborhood, Daily Market on Savin Hill Ave. Savin Hill Ave and Sydney Street is opening tomorrow. It just happens to be my brother who's the developer and the person who's opening the store. The tagline is where community and convenience collides. So thank you. And also, I have one question if I'm allowed to ask. So in the lobbying here, we were talking about no persons who for compensation reward acts to promote, oppose, or influence a matter pending before the council. Does that mean the advocates that are paid to be here, are they going to have to take out the lobbying? Are they going to need to register as lobbyists? Because it looks like they're paid to push an agenda. Just a thought. Whoever wants to answer it today, I'll be around.
Feel free to file a hearing order on that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, hearing none, we will move on to memorials. I would like to ask all members and guests to please rise. We will adjourn today's meeting in memory of the following individuals. For Councilor Baker and Flaherty, Jake Trainer. For Councilor Bach, Michael J. Lack. For Councilor Braden, Rachel Ann Taylor. For Councilor Campbell, James Clark. For Councilor Edwards, Anna Romano Ventola and Frederick Freddie Pedrino. For Councilor Asabi George, Christopher McGuff. From Councilor Flaherty, William Shaughnessy and Carmen Lopez Cabrera de Enrique. For Councilor O'Malley, Ed Maza, and Jeanette Vasquez. And for the chair, all those involved in the helicopter crash over the weekend, John Attabelli, Kerry Attabelli, their daughter Alyssa Attabelli, Christina Mazur, Ara Zobanian, Sarah Chester, Peyton Chester, Gianna Bryant, and Kobe Bryant. A moment of silence. The chair moves that when the council adjourns today's meeting, it does so in the memory of the aforementioned individuals. This body is scheduled to meet again on Wednesday, February 5th at 12 noon here in the Ionella Chamber at Boston City Hall. All those in favor of adjournment, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The council is adjourned.